the former women's bantamweight world champion and current one championship vice president, none other than the woman they called Cupcake, Miesha Tate. Welcome to the show, Miesha.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad we could finally make it work.
Absolutely, me too. I'm so glad to have you here. As I mentioned, we've had so many big stars on the show, and I've been following the world of MMA from the very beginning since 1993 when I was quite young, and I was always a huge fan of women's MMA. I was actually watching a women's MMA from before you were in it. I watched one of the opponent that you beat to win the Strikeforce title. I was watching Marloes Coenen when she started. And I got the VHS tape of the remix Smack Girl Cup in 2000 when Marloes fought 3 fights to win that very first championship of hers.
You might have been a fan before I was even then. When was that?
That was the year 2000. It was Smack Girl Remix Cup 2000. Yeah. What year? I was going to ask you, what year did you take notice of MMA?
2000, like the end of 2005.
Okay. Did you ever see the tournament that Marloes won with the 3 fights I'm talking about, Smack Girl Cup?
You know, I had researched Marloes before I fought her, so I'm sure I probably watched at least one. I don't know if all those fights were available like after the fact when I was going to fight her, you know. I think she had removed some fights or something like that, but I tried to watch every fight that she had.
Yeah, it's very possible. That was a really interesting. It was a women's open weight 8-woman elimination, and it had I'm pretty sure it did. Yeah, it had Becky Levi in it, who was about 6'2" and 220 pounds, and she was a former power lifter, and she was a strength and conditioning trainer for Dan Severn and Don Fry. She used to walk them down the aisle, and at like 6'1", 6'2", she was like just as tall as those guys, and a really strong woman. Marloes caught her. I think Marloes was like 155, and Levi was like 220, and she caught her in a flying armbar. And
wow.
and Becky Levi yelled in pain to cause the tap out, a verbal tap out.
Yeah.
And then in the final fight, Marloes went up against a woman who was a really good fighter in the early days, Megumi Yabushita. And Megumi Yabushita had the most amazing fight, I think, before that fight. Megumi was like 5'3" and about 125 pounds. She went up against like a 6'2", 330-pound Svetlana Gundarenko.
Jeez.
Yeah, in an absolute
crazy. That's that's like women's MMA in its infancy.
Yes, it really, really was. And I remember before that fight, by the way, also in that fight, if you ever have a chance to see it, the final match, I think, was something like 2 or 3 10-minute rounds, I think, with Megumi Yabushita and Marloes, and I think it went like 25 minutes or something to a decision. It was amazing. They beat the crap out of each other. I mean, such a dynamic fight, because like Megumi was a judo black belt and also had some wrestling for a Japanese fighter, and she kept taking Marloes down, who didn't really seem to know much about takedown defense, but she was only 19 years old at the time. And whereas Marloes was like 7 inches taller and like 30 pounds heavier and was just kicking the crap out of Megumi, but then she'd be taken down and slammed on her back. And it was, absolutely amazing. But so many amazing women's fights. But right from the beginning, I was a big fan of women's MMA. And I watched Gina Carano in Fight Girls on Oxygen Network. Did you ever see that back in 2005 or 6?
No, I mean, I saw like some of the promotional highlights of it, but I didn't actually see the full on show. I saw maybe like 1 or 2 episodes, and that was it. Yeah, at that time.
It was really cool. And so right from, that point, I was talking women's MMA up. And I remember when I saw that Fight Girls on Oxygen Network, it had been, I think, 1.5 years since The Ultimate Fighter started. And I remember I was telling everyone, why can't they have women on The Ultimate Fighter? I want to see women on The Ultimate Fighter. And I was saying that, awesome. And all of a sudden you're there a couple years later, and so that rocked. But, so much to talk about, but let's jump into one championship. You're doing some amazing stuff there. There are some amazing athletes there, and there are some huge stars, and we're talking about people like Ong La and Song, and we're talking about Brandon Vera, we're talking about Angela and Christian Lee, brother and sister, we're talking about Rainer de Ritter. So many amazing people there. Tell us a little bit about what one has in store here for everyone in 2021. And you know, what are your thoughts about some of these great names that I threw out there, or if there's anyone else that you think are going to be really big stars that people should be watching for?
Well, I think one of the really exciting things about 2021 that we have planned is a women's atomweight tournament, which will establish a contender since Angela Lee is expecting. She's 6 or maybe approaching 7 months along. She wants to have her baby. Then she wants to get back in shape and defend her belt. So I think Chatri decided that the best way to kind of fill out the division, get some fights moving, and keep everybody happy is to do a tournament style, which would be broken up over, months of time, not all in one night. But, Meng Bo has a fight coming up. I believe it's January 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. But I think she would potentially also be a part of that tournament when she is the only fighter to ever have beaten Wei Li Zhang.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty exciting to have her in that. Then there's also Denise Zamboanga. Now, Denise is somebody who I've just been saying that people need to keep on their radar because she's got something unique about her. And it's not something that I can say, it's because she has great wrestling or she's got a, great rear naked choke. It's not like that. It's like she's just special as a fighter. She goes out there and she fights with her whole heart and soul, and she just she's young and she's hungry, and she probably thinks she knows it all. She's at that point in her career, and she's probably going to have a lot to learn along the way, but I think she will do exactly that. She's going to surprise a lot of people. She comes in a lot of times as the underdog, and she wins fights that she quote unquote shouldn't win, or people don't think that she's going to be able to live up to the expectation, but she always seems to exceed. And so she'll be a part of that tournament. And I'm just excited to see, a women's tournament, all female tournament in one of the most stacked divisions in one championship.
Absolutely. There are so many women in Asia that weigh anywhere from 100 pounds to 110, 115 pounds. And so you're getting like the best of the best athletes and those smaller athletes there that are amazing. And it's great to hear Angela will be coming back. So many other questions, and we'll come back to it. But one thing you just hit on, that she's pregnant and she's planning on coming back, and she's only 24, I believe. I think I looked. And so what are the thoughts for someone 10 years older that we're looking at here ever doing the same thing? Is there any possibility, Miesha, that someone at one can tempt you into something? Have you thought about it? You have a couple kids, any chance at all, or is that something that would take a miracle to have happen?
Well, look, it's it's something like I'm retired, but I've never fully closed the door on anything. I'm kind of an open door person. I just like to follow my heart, and whatever I feel like is the right decision in that time. That's kind of why I'm a bit sporadic. I like to call it passionate. And I definitely follow my heart. So, it's not a zero possibility chance, but I just know right now I'm really focused on taking care of my 2 little ones. I got 2 kids under 2.5, and it's a lot of work. And most days I'm very overwhelmed, but I'm in the gym training. I get in there every day and make time. And even if it's not at the gym, even if it's just in my garage with a Bulgarian bag or something like that, I'm trying to get in better shape, and I feel like I'm in pretty good shape, but actually already. So right now I'm just focused on like maybe a grappling match or something like that, and see about getting those kind of competitive vibes. I know Cyborg called me out to a grappling match, which I think that's really exciting to me. That definitely excites me and gets me motivated. Has encouraged me to push myself beyond just a normal person shape. There's like normal person shape, and then there's like top level athlete competitive shape.
Right.
So I'm striving to get back into that kind of shape, and I think I'm well on my way, and just grinding away, and hopefully in the first half of 2020 I can make something happen competitively.
That would be awesome. Now, having kids.
2021. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It went
Let's
by.
throw away 2020.
Exactly. We have to. We have to. We were all thinking how cool 2020 sounded. This will be the year with 2020 vision. And it was like a big bump with a, drum roll. It just sucked. So hopefully we'll have some big changes to what we experienced last year. Has having kids and seeing some women that are competing in MMA as biological mothers, has that given you more respect for what they do, or did you always have that respect?
There's no way I could have understood what a mother goes through until you experience it firsthand. I mean, I think I've always tried to have respect for mothers and appreciation, but when you experience it firsthand, you really understand it. And I don't know if there's anybody in the UFC right now that has two children so close together. It definitely adds a lot to the plate. But regardless, just being, even just a mom of one, I mean, just my 2-year-old is enough to keep me busy throughout the majority of the day. And like going through training camps, like I could only imagine like how difficult it is sometimes, because I don't know about other moms, but myself, I'm competitive by nature. So I'm not just competitive like in a competition standpoint. I'm competitive to be the best mom. I really push myself in all areas and all facets of my life, and the best, VP for one championship, and the best, just whatever I'm doing, I want to be the best at it. So I set the bar really high, and a lot of days, I'll be honest, I'm overwhelmed, but I would rather be overwhelmed than underwhelmed. I would much rather be busy and have a little too much on my plate and kind of struggle to get through a day and feel like really accomplished and kind of relieved at the end of the day than to waste a day away or be bored or depressed or whatever. And that's what happens if I don't have enough to do. If I'm not busy, then I just get kind of bored and lackadaisical, and I really do not enjoy that. And that's what happened when I was in Singapore on lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's when I really experienced that. I'm like, I learned a lot about myself there because, I was pregnant. I had my son during pretty much the height of the pandemic there. And I just, the lockdown and all that stuff really forced me to slow down. I mean, I was traveling every weekend. We were throwing shows all the time. I was, out doing, like media events, like all kinds of things for one. And then it went into lockdown, and I'm on this little tiny island with basically no friends because I've been way too busy to focus on a social life. I've just been about my family. No family or friends could come and visit us because the borders are completely closed. So granted, I appreciated having the extra time with my family, and that was a beautiful thing. And I got to enjoy the tail end of my pregnancy and the birth and all that stuff. Kind of slowed down, but I also kind of felt like there's something not right about me in this situation. Like I've got to get up and move and make more things happen. So I'm back in the US, I'm back in Vegas, and we're just kind of settling down here. We came back to the States in September, stayed in Washington primarily with my family, moved back into our house in Vegas, and now we're just kind of really getting settled as of just before the new year. So great.
That sounds awesome. And I know you were originally from Washington. You have Matt Hume as part of one championship. Have you had any interactions with him? And did you ever have any interaction with him, being that you were both in Washington and he had AMC Pancration and such an established, respected team? Yeah. And now DJ is there at one. So yeah, any tie-ins? And what's been your experience with Matt Hume? Have you gotten to know him at all?
Oh, my biggest tie-in to Matt Hume would just be the fact that I've known DJ since high school. We went to rival high schools, and he actually was the same weight class as my best friend in high school, who also wrestled with me. Her name was Sharon. And so they actually ended up wrestling each other a few times. And we were always just like, oh my gosh, that guy. Like, he always stood out, DJ did. He was so fast. And I always kind of felt sorry for her. And I was like, oh no, that guy again?
Yeah.
The same one last year? Oh no, you have to wrestle him again? That's terrible. And so that's really just my biggest tie-in with Hume. I've gotten to know him a lot better since being a part of one championship. He's a great guy. And when I was back in Washington, I was like, I'd love to come and train. And he's like, well, we'd love to have you too, but COVID kind of done this and like
Right.
the shutdowns. And so COVID's messed up so much. Otherwise, I think I would have had a better story for you now about training with Matt Hume. But earlier in my career, we never did end up crossing paths. So hopefully, you know, when these shutdowns, I think Washington State is still on lockdown till something like the 11th.
Right.
If it doesn't get extended. And so hopefully next time I'm actually up there, we could maybe make something happen.
Absolutely. He's got such a wealth of knowledge. I remember.
He's a wizard. Yeah.
He is. And you know what's funny? Check this out. I was watching him compete. I saw when he fought Pat Miletich, and then the great coaching he gave to Josh Barnett and so many other people. I could swear that I actually said that guy is like a wizard before they ever called him the wizard on TV. Now, I could be wrong. It may have just been that I thought that, but I'm almost positive that I said that guy's like the wizard before they called him that. So maybe somehow just the world, the vibes, the energy somehow heard me. But I'm like, I'm partially responsible, darn it, for Matt Hume being the wizard. But anyway, yeah, he's just a really sharp guy and a great team. And and so you've competed and trained with so many great teams as well. You got into wrestling when you were really young, and then you wanted to compete in MMA because I think you had some male friends that were competing. And what did you think? There wasn't so much to watch as far as women, I guess, except for the things that I was mentioning. And they had the hook and shoot. And you just jumped into that. Were you scared at all about what you were doing, or did you have any thoughts about no one's not even hearing much about women's MMA? What was your mindset about wanting to get into fighting back then, and what was it like fighting in those early days?
I just really loved it, to be honest, because there was no other reason to be fighting. It certainly wasn't the cool thing to do, and it wasn't very widely accepted. I mean, my family, like, nobody wanted me to do it. Nobody really supported me full-heartedly. My mom tried to support, as any mother would do when their child says, this is what I want to do. But she had her apprehensions. My dad really wasn't supportive at all in the beginning. He didn't want me doing it. No friends, family. Like, when you would try to explain to them what it was, like, even men's MMA at that point wasn't so widespread.
Right.
Like, there was still some uphill battles. They were like, men in the UFC and all that were still battling the stigma, that these are a bunch of dumb, toothless brawlers, uneducated, human cockfighting. Like, that was still kind of running rampant at that point. So imagine trying to like get support as a woman to do it. It just really was very few and far between when you could get that kind of support. And Hook and Shoot at Bodog was one of the first to really support women on a somewhat not exactly mainstream, but it was the biggest thing that we had going for us. It was before Strikeforce. And so I started fighting as an amateur. Then I had 6 amateur fights, and then I went pro. And then my pro debut was that tournament, the Hook and Shoot tournament, where I fought Caitlin Young, and she like kicked my head into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
That was like
All right.
Yeah, like out of this planet. That was my second fight after I fought Jan Finney. Funny story about that one. I don't know if you ever knew this. I've said it in a couple interviews, but I don't think it's widespread knowledge that fight actually went 4 rounds, not 3. It says on Sherdog that it was 3 rounds,
Right.
but it was 4 rounds because they could not decide who had won.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was some controversy at the end of that fight. I think this is kind of just my hypothesis, right? The Jan Finney was the one. She was the veteran.
Yep.
She was a hometown girl from Evansville, Indiana, or somewhere close there, Indiana. And she was supposed to win the whole tournament. And I came in first round and like basically took her out, of the seeding. And after 3 rounds, I think somebody was really like, no, this girl won me.
Yep.
And other people were like, yeah, but it's close enough or whatever, that, Jan won or, I don't know. So after 3 rounds, it's funny because we were already starting to like shoot the shit and just kind of like tell each other like how great, the other person did, or
Right.
Man, you hit me with the hard this, or, oh, those leg kicks, they were killing me, like we were having that kind of conversation. And then all of a sudden they were like, you guys have to go 1 more round. And we're like,
What the
what?
hell?
Like,
Yeah, because that was never agreed upon.
like we're already complimenting, giving all the secrets away, all the stuff that was mattering in the fight. So we went one more round, and like I took her down, and then again they were kind of debating after that round who really won. I was like, this is getting silly. And she's like, yeah. So the referee ended up picking who won the fight. And then he raised my hand, which was great until I had like 18 minutes to fight. Or at least is what it felt like. Anyways, It was short, maybe 30 minutes to fight Caitlin.
Wow.
She had like it literally, I think her fight was like, I think it was actually 18 seconds. Her first round, like she got somebody that was just a great matchup for her. So, I learned a lot in that. Like tournaments are rough. Like you never know what, who you're going to get first round and how you're going to make it in the second rounds. Someone else is fresh and you're not, or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was how I got my introduction to pro fighting.
Definitely a baptism by fire there.
Yes.
The multiple fights in the same night was always so much fun for the fans, but but obviously very hard for the fighters, and there's now no sanctioning body that will allow it. I know that Invicta did something where the women fought one 2-minute round or something, and then they were able to do, because I think I heard that commission said the only way you can do multiple fights in a night is if the total minutes fought are no more than 6 minutes, right, or something. So I know Invicta did something like that. Interesting.
Well, Strikeforce did something like that too. When I fought Hitomi Akano and what's her name? I don't remember. She was my first fight. Sorry, I drawing a blank on it. Maybe I'll think of it in a second. She's from Finland. So I fought her and won, and then Hitomi Akano fought and won, and then we fought each other. But it was something weird like that, where it was like the first round was like 2-minute rounds, and it was basically that the minutes could not exceed 20. The total minutes of potential fight time could not exceed 25 minutes. So I think the first was like 2-minute rounds, and then the fight I think with Hitomi and I was 3-minute rounds, and however they broke that up so that it couldn't potentially equate more than 25 minutes.
I got you. Makes sense. The first opponent, it looks like, was Meiju Suetama, I think. Is that?
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's her name now, her married name. It was Meiju Kujala was her name.
Kujala, I remember that. Fight. Kujala, yeah. That's a trip. It's interesting how they did that. Well, you had some amazing fights there. I will tell you this. When they paired you with Marloes Coenen, I knew that was going to be a really good fight, having watched her since the year 2000. I will say this. I don't think she or her team thought you had a chance in hell of submitting her. I don't think they even worried about that. And I think that a lot of people watching, not to diminish the respect you had, but I think a lot of people watching were already not looking at that as a possible ending. How much faith did you have that you could do that? And obviously that was one of your strengths with your wrestling background. That arm triangle, neck and arm choke from the top is something you're good at, and wrestlers are really strong in that position. So I know you had that, but were you looking for that? Did you think that was a possibility? Didn't you have some thoughts that, why would I even waste my time trying to submit Marloes Coenen? Or how did that play out in your head? Because that shocked a lot of people, and I kind of was one included.
You know what? I knew at the time that I had a really good ground game that was very underestimated, and largely because it was pretty undiscovered. I hadn't really shown it that well in my fights, and it takes years of doing something really well and perfecting it in the gym before it tends to come out in a fight oftentimes. And I think that's really what it was, is like that was kind of the moment that it all came together. And I had planned on taking her down and trying to submit her or TKO her the entire time. And I remember looking at her. So let me start when I first saw Marloes fighting, and I was researching her, and I saw her fight Cyborg, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, she is a beast.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And I kid you not, when I saw her fight Cyborg, I thought, I hope I never have to fight her, because she is so tough. Like, I don't know how,
Yeah.
But then it was a short amount of time, really. Like, I don't even know how long it was between that thought and the time that I fought her. But by the time I was ready to fight her, I was in a totally different mindset, a totally different belief and league about myself. And it was just a maturing process where it went from, somebody who was like an idol to me to somebody who was an opponent that I knew I could beat.
Yeah.
And that was a big growth and evolution in my career. And then I remember at that time I was studying her ground game, and I'm like, man, her ground game is pretty basic. Like if I put her on her back, like she's going to try to armbar me or triangle me. She's got some decent sweeps. She can move on the ground, but I was like, I think I could deal with that just fine. I was like, I have the answer for that. And, it's the top pressure, ground and pound. And I was like, and I've got some nasty submissions that nobody really knows about yet myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the confidence. I knew that she could move okay on the ground, but I didn't see it as anything that was like, would be any real problem for me.
Gotcha. Compare the feeling that you had after that victory, earning the Strikeforce title, as opposed to the feeling when beating Holly, winning the UFC title.
Well, I will say after I beat Marloes for the Strikeforce world title, I mean, that was as big as it got at the time. So, I mean, that was like the top of the mountain. That was a dream come true, and I certainly don't want to downplay that moment. But a big part of my joy was not only that, I became a world champion, I beat a former idol of mine, finished her, but that I had a knee injury going into that. I had torn my MCL, a grade 3 tear of my MCL. So a lot of people were like, you shouldn't take that fight. You shouldn't do it, this and that. I was like, no, I'm going to do this fight. So my preparation for that was a lot of like swimming, a lot of ground and pound on the bag, a lot of stationary boxing, because I just couldn't move very well. But I had some great support. I got, hyperbaric chamber treatments. I got I was doing like ice baths, like just things like that, really trying to cater my training and get the professional help that I could. And I think it made a big difference. I think I had the tear happened about 2.5 or 3 weeks out from the fight. But I was able to do a lot of recovery just in those couple weeks. It certainly was nowhere near 100%, but I got in there and I got it done. So I think part of the emotional that you see right there is like, oh my God, like
Relief, right?
Yes, relief. Like I made the right decision, and I was just happy that I was able to go out there and do what I knew I could do, despite other people telling me that it wasn't a good idea. People that were more mature than me in the fight game, and people who I knew I should respect their opinion, but at the same time, I'm like, but I know what I'm capable of, and so that was the relief. And then when I fought Holly, I didn't have any real injuries, so to speak, just bumps and bruises. And but there was a lot of pressure too, because I really felt like this definitely could be my last title shot. Like I didn't beat Ronda, but I was like, so I've got to get it done against Holly, because at the time I was telling myself, this is the last title shot you'll ever get. And that's the kind of the mindset that I went in there with. So that was the culmination. That was obviously a new height, a new peak, a new mountain to climb. And, it was like about around 10 years almost to the day I think that I had my first fight as to when I won that championship, UFC championship. So again, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of gratitude, and, relief again, and your dreams coming true.
Absolutely. And I think you won both titles under the different nicknames. I think the Strikeforce, you were still Takedown Tate, weren't you? Or did you change the cup? Yeah. So you won one. Takedown. Yep. You won one under the Takedown nickname and one under the Cupcake nickname. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a good accomplishment. Let me ask you about women's MMA, and I really value your opinion because your perspective is amazing from having been there early on, been there, recently in the modern era, and being a VP in charge of so many things involving fighting at one championship. So where do you think we are in women's MMA today, compared with how great it can be, and how big it can be, and how good the athletes can get? Are we right there now where you would say this might be the best it's ever going to get? Are we far away from there, or are we maybe really close to there compared to when you started, let's say?
I think, well, at least when it comes to the women's division, that the biggest problem is depth. I still feel like that's still a problem. And it's not that the women's divisions aren't getting deeper, it's that there are more promotions taking on more women too. You know what I mean? So like some of the divisions that would be more full if it was all under one promotional banner are a bit thinner because there's more promotions and wanting women, realizing and seeing the value, which is great. And as far as the evolution of the sport in general, I mean, I think the large evolutions have the majority of that has already taken place, because I mean, you think back in the day, it used to be like somebody who only wrestled versus somebody who only did straight jujitsu versus somebody who only boxed. You know, it was
Right.
very individual. Then the sports started to really mesh and create like hybrid versions of, you know, those best versions. So I think that big growth period is over, so to speak. And then now it's a game of inches. You know, like there are evolutions in the sport and things, but I think we'll see certain things circle around, you know, something that people used to do a while ago and then kind of got away from it. And then so you see like Nico Price got that knockout from the bottom,
Yes.
right? And then Kevin Holland got a knockout from the bottom. So now it's in people's minds like, oh, you can do that. And we might see more of that now. People starting to just try it out. Like, you know, because I was always told, don't punch from the bottom. It's a waste of time. You're losing on the judges' scorecards. And what are you going to do from there? You know, that just basically says like, you're okay with losing. No, get up, you know, reverse the position and then worry about that. But I mean, here, these guys are, you know, proving that theory wrong, like that things you can do damage from the bottom. So, you know, and then you have something like, you know, the Showtime Anthony Pettis kick, the thing off the wall, the cage wall. And
Right.
you see like then everybody in the gym like trying to do that, you know. So these things go around and it's just like I said, it's a game of inches at this point, and different things that can be effective at times will kind of stick in people's minds, and then something else new and crazy will happen, and that's how the sport continues to evolve. A lot of it is, you know, inspiration based.
Without a doubt. What about weight classes? This is something that I've been harping on for the entire 4 years that we've had our show on the air, and especially when it was approved, I think in the United States about 3 years ago. And here's what they said. They said we would approve if MMA organizations wanted to remove 170 and wanted to put in 165 and 175, and then wanted to put in 195 and 225 limit. And nobody's done that. And I know most of those weight classes don't involve women that much, but then obviously in one championship, you're working with both men and women. So let me ask you kind of a two-part question. A, is there any thought that one might be looking to make any changes like that for just the weight divisions that could be for men or women? And then the second is, what about larger women? I'm dying to hear your opinion, because we've got Kayla Harrison, even though Kayla showed that she could come down to 145, and she did, and she beat the crap out of a tough woman. Maybe not elite level like her, but someone who is tough. And then you have Gabby Garcia, who is just huge. And I know that aesthetics does take a part in it. I know that people want to see women that look fit and maybe not huge. I think you were a great image for MMA, and Gina Carano, and women that looked similar to kind of the normal woman as far as height and weight. But I'm kind of thinking, what about big girls that want to fight? Is there a reason why that can't happen? Or why can't we do that? Are people gonna gag if they watch 180-pound women fight? Tell me what your thoughts on that, because I kind of feel like we should give them a chance, and I don't feel like nobody would watch them. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, I think that there's always room for growth, and culture in general can evolve and change and adapt and accept new things. And I think the more that we normalize what we don't necessarily consider normal now, I mean, there was a time when, not that long ago, that women fighting was just like repulsive to
Yeah.
most people, like probably 9 out of 10. Like, that's a terrible idea. Why would
Right.
women ever do that? Who
Right.
would ever watch that? It's so
Right.
barbaric. It's disgusting that men even do it.
Right.
Women shouldn't even entertain that idea. How terrible,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Um, so I mean, like, even people that cover the sport, like so many people have come around to the idea of women fighting now and are some of our biggest fans. But I think a lot of people had an aversion to it at first and then realized the value in it. I think maybe the same thing with like heavier weight classes of women. Doesn't mean that bigger women or bigger athletes can't be beautiful as well and can't be, just, doing great and amazing things that people want to see. I don't necessarily see it that way. I've seen some success with it a little bit in Japan. Yeah, I think the 155, again, it's just building it, giving the opportunity, and I think those females will come. I have a friend of mine, Bailey, who fights at like 185, but it's just hard for her to find, maybe even a little heavier than that. She might even be a little closer to 200. But she's big, but she fights and she has a great following, and she's, does on regional shows. So, it's just one of those things that I think with some time people can start to wrap their minds around it. And that's, again, it's evolution in society. I think it'll happen. I just think it'll be a slow crawl to the top, but it will get there.
Absolutely. Any thoughts of one changing around the weight divisions, maybe not going with the super heavier ones for women, but maybe experimenting with like 165, 175, or
Right.
225, anything like that?
Well, you know what? That's not something that I've heard discussed. It's not, I don't work with like the athlete department though. That's not really, so maybe I'm off on that.
Right.
Haven't heard anything said about it. But one championship, I think the reason usually you hear that people want the weight classes that way is to try to avoid extreme cuts,
Right.
right? And one championship avoids that already by doing hydration testing and making sure that the athletes don't cut weight. So how it works for one championship, if you are a featherweight, you fight at 145, right? You actually get to weigh in at 155 and you're still considered a featherweight, but you weigh in hydrated and you have to pass a hydration test. So you like pee into a cup and they test it with a reverse osmosis little gadget that tells you basically how many parts of water versus how many parts of waste, how hydrated this person is. So they have to pass that and the weight. Yeah, so I mean, essentially, it kind of already eliminates the weight cutting, which is, a dangerous and kind of ugly part of our sport that I think is outdated. And I think we need to, move beyond that as a whole. I think everybody should implement hydration testing. So I don't think so. I don't think we would need to change weight classes when you have people able to weigh in at like the weight that they actually walk around at.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said that because I was going to bring that up, and I know you could speak on it much greater than much more in an informed fashion than that's one thing I'm really excited about what you guys are doing in one championship. So my producer and co-host, I think, is telling me that it's a microphone issue. That's what he's pointing at. There we go. Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. So thanks for your patience, Miesha. So yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed is that your fighters don't look dehydrated. They really look like they're going in there with everything they have, and it's safer that way. And that's something that I really think is something that one championship is really leading the way with. I just think it's a lot better, and other organizations are still doing great with their policies, but I just think it's safer and better to not be dehydrated. If you had been fighting in one championship in your career, do you think then you would have been competing more at like 140 or 143 or 45, or where do you think you would have been? I think in your earlier days, no, because I remember you being pretty small
Yeah.
when you were
Yeah.
really young. But
I used to walk around like earlier in my career about 138 to 140.
right.
And then later in my career, was always about 147 was pretty standard for me, like walking around every day in a good training camp. And then like outside of camp, I was usually like 149, like not much difference, would just come down a couple pounds. Um, and then, yeah, so I mean, I probably would have been more like I still would have been bantamweight under those, right? I would have just weighed in at about 145, probably would have just dieted down, which is typical too, because usually by the time I got to like my actual cut, like the, week maybe before the fighter, I would dip down to about 46, 45, right? And then, yeah, then I would make my cut from about 145.
Makes sense. Do you have confidence that you could get back into that same shape after having 2 kids that you used to be in? I would imagine you do have confidence in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm 34 and I know, time is the enemy of all of us, but I don't feel at all washed up. I don't feel like it's not possible. Like I've been, training, I've been going into pro practice and I don't feel like, time has gotten the best of me yet. So, I still give these guys a good go at it. Trust me. And, yeah, I definitely feel like, putting my mind to it, like I will get back into competition shape.
Absolutely, and I believe it 100%. And at 34, you really are still a young puppy. I know if someone's 21, they might say not, but in reality, you've only been an adult for 16 years of your life, which is really not a long time. And so, being older than you, you are not an old person. So I would not be surprised if you go out there and kick ass again. And I think also the discipline that you guys have as professional athletes, just being able to tap into that, I think will serve you really well for the rest of your life, as I'm sure you know too, you know what I mean? Because you know that you can sacrifice, you know that you can diet. I remember seeing you do these core workouts like walkovers, other different things, the neck exercises, like I forget some videos you made like 7 or 8 years ago, and I remember thinking, shit, that is like some serious core stuff. And I knew that women were doing that, I didn't doubt that, but when I saw you do it, I was like, wow, it's like, you do some really good core stuff, and you've got to be really strong from your neck to your shoulders to your hips to everything.
Yeah, from the top of your head to the tip of your toes. Like
Pretty
everything.
much. That's it. It looks pretty, but strong as hell.
It's really like not a muscle that MMA doesn't work. I mean, it is a full body workout.
Yeah, I remember when I had a girlfriend years back and I first showed her MMA athletes and she was pretty fit. And then I think I showed her a picture of you and a couple girls and she went, wow. He was like, wow, these girls are way better
level.
shape. Yeah.
It's a different level, that's for sure. Like, I feel like I'm more than like normal person fit, I'm already, but like to get on that level of fitness, like I've still got some work to do, but I am motivated, so I'll get there.
Without a doubt. We've only got about 3 minutes left with you, Miesha, so I want to stick in a few questions really quick. One of our contributors, thanks, Francesca Dominique had a really good question. She's a female MMA fan, and as well as male MMA fan, but as a woman, she wondered, did you have a game plan for toward the end of your career to be able to move on and get involved in a fighting organization, be it behind the scenes? Did you have a plan for that? And if you didn't, do you recommend that other fighters maybe get some sort of advice and counsel while they're fighting to have some sort of plan of attack for when the fighting ends?
I certainly think it's smart to do that. I wouldn't say that I didn't have an exact plan because I wasn't planning on retiring. I didn't know that I would feel that way after or during the fight, really. So I kind of even surprised myself. But I didn't have an exact plan, but I felt like I had laid enough groundwork and enough different directions to kind of have options. Like I had worked on the Fox desk. I was managed by Kevin Harvick Incorporated, who, was a great company who, again, had tons of relationships and ties. And when I was out in Singapore with the UFC doing signings, I had met with Chaudhry. That's how I became, part of one championship. But again, like, I think the fact that I was not really ever burning bridges, like things like that, those are important to remember. Like you will need to have a career after the career. And I think having a plan even probably would have served me better, but I am happy where I ended up. I would definitely recommend for fighters to think about their future after fighting, because it just doesn't last forever. Nothing does, but it goes by fast. And fight careers are relatively short-lived careers. It's not like being a doctor that you can do it till you're near 70. It just doesn't work that way.
Very true. When's the next event for One Championship? And let people know how we can watch One Championship in the United States or in Europe, or other than people that are local there in Singapore
Yeah.
or Asia.
So you can watch via the One Championship app if you're not in the US, or YouTube or Facebook, like all the different platforms. It's either whatever that Saturday is in the like the 20th, 22nd. It's that I'm dyslexic with numbers, so that always hurts me when I try to remember dates. But I think it's 22nd if that's a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
It's that weekend that the next card will be. And if you're in the US, you can watch it on BR Live. So you can download the BR Live app. You can download the One Championship app, but they think there's like a block on it for us in the US because they want you to tune into BR Live because we have a good, a good outlet there for BR Live. So that's where you'd want to watch it if you're stateside. Anywhere else, though, you pretty much pick a media outlet and you'll be able to watch it. I think even streaming on Twitter. Yeah. So it's they make it pretty easy for you to watch it, and it's free 90 free, that you don't have to pay anything to watch great, excellent, top tier fights.
Absolutely.
So everybody can appreciate that, especially with rising prices everywhere else.
Without a doubt, in light of 2020, that free price is pretty much what people can afford after the year we've all been through. Well, seeing you involved, and Rich Franklin, Matt Hume, seeing Demetrius Johnson, still, in my opinion, probably pound for pound best fighter in the world, and so many great fighters there. You guys want to check One Championship. You can find Miesha Tate on social media. I don't think there's other Miesha Tates, and if you look for a blue check mark, you can see it's the real Miesha Tate. And, Miesha, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I've been a big fan for so many years. Getting a chance to chat with you has made me even a bigger fan. I can't wait to cheer on the work you do. Continue doing it, one, and then if you're in a grappling match or in a fight anywhere, I'll be cheering for you.
I appreciate that. Sorry for being a little bit late. I was putting my son to sleep, and I apologize